Hey guys, it's Jennie Wolek with the Wolek Group here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So excited to see some friendly, fun faces here on this Friday. Every week I just wanted to come live on different topics that you guys are asking questions about and things I want to continue to learn and grow on as well. So today I invited my friend Josh Anderson out of Nashville, Tennessee to chat with us on the topic of the showing agent model. And I know Josh has been living in that world of using showing partners and buyer agents for a really long time. So I'm going to just turn it over to you, Josh. Why don't you just tell everybody who you are, what you do, and how you first started implementing this model into your business. And then we can dive deep on other questions as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I've been in the business since 2006. I'm originally from Nashville. And so just like digested idea of what we did last year or what we did last year and what we're doing this year. We did a little over 100 million last year in volume. So there's about 15 people on our team. And this year we'll do somewhere in the 130 to 140 million. So this year's our best year ever. That's about 250-ish transactions. So our average price point is pretty close to 500. I'm smiling because Jennie's is about half of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I started or implemented the showing agent model in 2011. So I went to Mega Camp in September of 2011, and Gary was talking about this whole showing agent, showing model, but nobody was really doing it. So it was more of kind of a conversation or an idea at that point. And I was that was the one thing I took back from that particular conference. And so I kind of said, and I always roomed with Aaron Armstrong, who's an agent in our market center. And we both went back and implemented it kind of at the same time. He probably beat me to it a little bit, but he's kind of abandoned it at this point, and we still use it at a pretty high level. I think the biggest piece people struggle with the most is like wrapping their head around this idea of like, my client wants to work with me, or it feels like a pure pass off kind of thing. And I'm not going to say that it was, it is like well run now, but the first couple of transactions, I think we definitely lost clients, and I don't know that we believed in it enough or understood it enough on the first couple of transactions. And so we kind of like went back to the drawing board, figured out one of the things that we figured out was it's a pass off, but it's never talked about as a pass off. It's always, you're going to be working with my business partner, Caroline or Stephanie or whoever it is. So it's always, the lingo is always business partner. And we just kind of package that as like, our market's really low inventory, and it has been for the last 5 years. It's very much a seller's market, and we have two people helping you. So we're both digging, we're both calling other agents, we're calling our past clients. And so really digging in. And when you package it that way, they're like, oh, awesome. I've got two people that are kind of like constantly working and digging around for like coming soons or off market properties or whatever it is. So it's never really a pass off. And I think that's the hardest thing. People say, well, that doesn't work in my market. It does work in your market. My price point in 2015 was 275, and it's 505 this year. And it works in the 175, the 225, the million. It doesn't matter. It's just a business partnership thing from a language perspective.
Something I want to pick your brain on while we're here on the front end of you just starting to implement this model and these ideas in your business is tell everyone, because I know you pretty well, tell everyone how much pain you were in doing, the listings and the buyers and the lead gen and wearing all the hats. I mean, you had to, when you heard Gary say this, you were like, oh yes, this is for me. How did you know that it was for you?
Well, because I don't like working with buyers. For one. I work with like 10 to 15 buyers a year and really enjoy it. But honestly, the two agents that work with me for 8 and 10 years, are better buyer's agents than me. So when a client says, well, who am I going to be working with? I say, look, I can work with you, and I think I'm a good agent, but Stephanie and Caroline specialize, like that's all they do. Just like the majority of what I do is on the listing side of the business. So, my personal opinion is that I know agents struggle with this, but specialization is kind of everything in my opinion. So if you're an individual agent, it's really hard because you don't want to turn away business. So you work with buyers and sellers, and you're the marketing person, and you're wearing all these different hats. And then you look up and you're working 15 hours a day, and it's not good. So,
Okay, well, where I was really trying to go with you is that you knew your strengths and your behavioral style, and
yeah.
buyers probably didn't go as fast or see as
Yeah, I was getting to that. I was just doing it really slow. I was giving some context. No, I do. I like working with listings and yeah, clients that, we've got clients coming in town this weekend that literally have never been to Nashville. And so that's a very different conversation, a different clientele than the person that calls me and says, hey, Josh, I'm not interested in moving, but I would move if you found me something on these two streets. They just know exactly what they want, and I can show them one or two properties and they buy something or they don't. Whereas, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so over the years, you have worked through the growth in obviously your production and your business and your price point. And so you've seen this model work, and other friends are running different but similar models as well. What are you seeing are things that you know now that you wish you knew then whenever you first started going with this idea?
Well, I think probably the packaging of it, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that we struggled with early on, and not just on the first couple of transactions. It's like really understanding that piece of it. I think agents have a hard time with the idea that maybe their client doesn't necessarily need them to show them the property. We all want to feel like we're needed in that moment of finding the property and the excitement that goes with it and all those things. So I don't know off the top of my head I think it was just lots of failing forward and figuring it out as you go. I think one of the other things that a lot of agents outside of the mindset piece, they struggle with, how do I pay this person, right? And so it's really going to be dependent. And I'll tell you what we do. I see a lot of posts on different pages of I pay $25 an hour or $25 per house or whatever. I think an hourly wage is crazy bad idea. There's no real vested interest. It needs to be tied to the closing, and it needs to be tied to the commission, so they get better at conversion and they get better at showing less houses rather than paying them $25 an hour. If they really like the people, they don't really have a vested interest to show them 3 houses. They're like, I can show them 27 houses and get to spend time with somebody that I just met that I really like. And so I think that's a really flawed model. Now, if you have a small team or you're an individual and you don't have this set up and you just needed to pay somebody in your market center, $50 or $100 or $300 to show a couple properties for a weekend that you're out, then that's totally fine. But
it's not scalable too.
Yeah. So we pay 15%. 15% at a $500,000 price point, they can actually stay in that role and make 6 figures. In Jennie's price point, it's a little bit harder. You might have to pay 20%. I had a guy in town, actually had dinner with somebody last night that's an agent that referred his business, and he just said, I'm paying my showing agents 20 and 25%. He said, I know I'm overpaying, but he's like, I set this expectation and I literally do not want to have anything to do with it once I hand it to them, and they literally do everything. So he's kind of quarterbacking the deal, literally from a writing of the offer, negotiating the offer, and doing the repairs. And he's paying them a little bit higher. And I don't know that his price point's quite as high. He's in downtown Chicago. I don't know what his price point is, but it's probably $400,000 or $500,000.
So I think what really matters when it comes to compensation is I think it's always math and numbers are what our business is all about. So you've got to crunch out what that's going to equal for the showing agent and your team, and their, what is that going to equal for them in a salary at the end of the year, and then
Yeah,
what.
so you kind of have to you kind of have to reverse engineer, like, realistically, how many deals do you think that you can involve that person in? And so, like, if you can only involve them in 24 transactions, like, they're not going to make enough money at 15 or 20%. So you might just have to bring them on as a buyer's agent. Um, if I was starting all of this over, like if I was ripping everything apart and starting over, which there's days I definitely think about it, I would probably, I think we as agents typically hire about 3 to 6 months too late on every position. And I think we historically have done it as cheap as possible. I know I'm guilty of that. And if I was doing this all again, I would probably hire the most expensive director of operations I could afford. And I probably wouldn't hire a buyer's agent second. I would probably hire the person that I hoped was my buyer's agent second. So I would bring them on as a showing agent. I would quarterback all the deals. As a matter of fact, I'd bring one on and I'd hopefully bring on 2 more and have like 3 showing agents and literally quarterback every deal to where I'm still the face until one of those 3 people stepped up as my lead buyer's agent or the most senior buyer's agent. So we did away with lead buyer's agent role. Not saying to do it. We have 2 that have been on the team for 8 and 10 years, and they're not necessarily they're the most tenured. They're not necessarily the lead buyer's agent. So I made them senior agents on the team. And so our junior agents have to do all their deals for 1 year with a senior agent on the team.
Yeah, so that's
And
so
so the
let's
reason,
go to that then. Let's go to, so you decide you want to run this plan, you create the play you're going to do with compensation. You have somebody that's a great fit for the role. What does the early on training look like? So the 30, 60, 90, what are the key metrics they must be nailing early on to perform high at this role?
yeah, it's probably, I will send, I'll send, if you've got everybody on here, I'll send y'all the 30, 60, 90. And I'll also send you, we kind of created this document called Path of Progression. And it basically just kind of shows, like, all right, you come in as a junior agent, here's what you're going to do for a year. And then we do kind of an evaluation, and here's different places that you can go within the organization. Um, and the biggest things in my opinion, so backing up, the training piece is probably a lot of, like, we have them go through Ignite and stuff like that, just as some of the generic things. But the pieces that I think are most important on the 30, 60, 90 is, so in the first 90 days, every week and every month, they have to sit through a certain amount of buyer consultations with a senior agent. To me, that is completely not negotiable. Like, they learn so much in those buyer consults, like questions to ask, figuring out, just like, yes, you can go Google LP Mama and figure out, like, hey, these are questions you can ask people, like what their motivation, are they pre-approved, what your timeline is, what is their criteria, because husbands and wives are typically not really on the same page about what they want in a house. So they go on a certain amount of listing appointments with me just to see that side of it, because about 50% of our listings are also buyers. And then the other big piece is, like, they're literally attached to the hip for 90 days. So you get on a call, like, there's no individual calls if you're involved in that transaction. So it's junior agent is calling senior agent or vice versa, then they're calling the client. So the second most important thing behind the buyer consultations that they sit in on, to me, are the like repair proposal calls, negotiating repairs. They learn so much stuff in those that, so it's not necessarily like, here's our breakout of our 30, 60, and 90, as much as there's key points. They also have to preview a certain amount of houses in different areas, different zip codes, different price points. One of the things we implemented about 1.5 years or 2 years ago was, this sounds silly, but quizzes. So we all want to be walking and talking the same. So like, we don't want the client to ask the junior agent something, and then they go back and ask the senior agent the same thing, and there's two different answers. Then you're like, oh crap. Internally, we're not communicating at a very high level. So our quizzes, and I'm happy to send you all the quizzes, but it's just things that we need to make sure we know, right? So like, what are the 55 plus communities? What encompasses this zip code? What are these schools? I don't care if you're 23 and you're not married and you don't have kids, schools probably don't really matter, but guess what? You're going to get that question. So we want to know, do you know what people deem the top three, elementary schools in Davidson County, top three in Williamson County, top three in whatever, middle schools, high schools? Tell us three things about this neighborhood. And that's kind of an open, easy one because they can come up with so many different things. But like, I always go back to the 55 plus communities. I mean, unless your parents live in a 55 plus community, why the hell would you know anything about a 55 plus community? You just wouldn't.
So I want to dive into this. So you've got your training period for your junior agents or your showing partners. Are they held to the same standards as your agents? Is there a lead generation requirement? Is that part of their job?
Yeah. So one of the things, and I know this is probably, there's a lot of agents that don't require their showing agents to do lead gen. The reason that we do it is because we know that the majority of the time that's kind of a starting position, and we know that they're not going to really want to stay in that position forever. What happens if they get to their year mark and they go, okay, now what? So now I'm automatically a buyer's agent? Yeah, cool. So how are you going to find appointments? How are you going to
Not trained up on that, yeah.
Yeah, so we require it because we know the next step is they're going to ask at 12-month mark. They are going to ask, hey, I want to sit for my 1-year evaluation and I want to be a buyer's agent.
Right.
Well, you haven't hit any of the metrics.
Right.
If they haven't hit any of the metrics, then we're probably not having the conversation because they're probably not on the team anymore. But anyway, it's, to me, it's important for them to do it. The other piece is the senior agents bring them in on deals, but it's kind of maybe an unspoken, like the senior agents are also training them to leverage their time, but they're also hoping that the junior agent or the showing agent, brings them in on deals. So it's kind of a win-win on both sides. So if both of them are doing, like JD on my team did, his first year in the business, he did 44 transactions, which is pretty solid for your first 12 months. And I'll say he didn't really start, he didn't do anything for the first 3 months. So really he did 44 transactions in 9 months.
So how do you know when you're ready to bring this person into your world?
Sorry. Rubber band. Wait, say that question again.
How do you know when you're ready? At what level of production should you be at as a solo agent or an agent with it? Obviously you need to have an admin before you even get to this point of thinking about this, right?
Yeah, I think this is a really open question as far as like, I think it depends on what somebody wants to do. Like, I think it kind of depends on people's capacity. Like so when we did this, Nina was my buyer's agent, and I think she was doing she was probably doing 60 deals. So she was doing like average 5 deals a month. I don't think you really need to be at that point, but it depends on if they're your showing specialist and you're trying to grow the team, then maybe it's less deals, maybe it's 36 deals. But it can't be 36 deals and then you have to bring on, it's got to be a point where you're like, I've always said it's like you're giving up a client experience, then that's when you need it. Right. So if you can manage 4 deals a month, that's 48 transactions a year. That would be hard to do if you don't have a really dialed in contract to close person or operations or whatever your first hire is. And everybody's first hire is a little bit different, but yeah, it just depends on where you are with building your business. It might only be like 30. I've seen people do like 20, 25 transactions. I think that's way too little. I think you're giving up money to just say that I want to build a team at 20 transactions.
So what do
They
you
can
think
make their
about, how do you think people, so this just popped in my mind. So back in 2015, when I had two agents leave the team in the same week, I got both jobs back of being the listing agent and the buyer agent. So quickly I went into, oh crap, what do I do now? And I just reached out to agents in my local market center and I said, if anyone is available to help me with showing. So I kind of use that as a Band-Aid to get, back going again. I paid them 25% for being a showing agent, whatever. So I thought that was a smart idea because that allowed me to see how people showed up without a true commitment of bringing them on the team yet. So I'm betting that a lot of people that are watching and are going to watch later are like, where do I find this person? I mean, how do you find them?
It can be as simple as that, or it can be somebody like, somebody that continues to raise their hand for your open houses, or, I mean, it can be a lot of things. I mean, you can go put out your ad, you can go reach out to your sphere, or it's likely somebody you already know. You don't need to necessarily put out the Indeed ads or the ZipRecruiter or whatever. It's probably somebody in your database. It's potentially a past client that, maybe you don't need a full-time showing agent yet. Maybe it's just somebody that's like maybe it's somebody that's a, stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, whatever it is, and they want to maybe dabble in it a little bit and figure it out.
I guess the expectations on that, Krista is asking, she wants to know how you communicate your expectations with potential showing agents and what those are. I think one of the expectations would probably be you're going to work nights and weekends. That would be a right?
Yeah, no matter how much I do this, I'm always amazed. Like, we found out recently, so I'll tell you, as good as I think that I am at this, so we found out recently, and she's a great showing agent. Well, we found out that she doesn't have a car, her own dedicated car. I was like, holy crap, that's not a question I thought to ask, because who would
not have a car?
Her and her sister share a car and they work at different brokerages.
Huh.
I was like, well, what happens when the sister has to go show properties at the same time you do? Like, she's like, yeah, that's one of my goals. And I'm like, yeah, well, you need to figure that out really quickly.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, we just found out 2 weeks ago. I was like, awesome. Yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years. Sorry, that was a sidetrack note. So what was the question again?
So I just think setting expectations. I think, first off, you got to take them through the career visioning process to make sure they're the right.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then how are you going to set the expectations with them?
So we do the exact same thing we do with anybody else on the team. We take them through the whole career visioning, recruit select, whatever you want to call it. We take them through that whole process. And then we also have a contract with everybody on the team. 1-year contracts, they have to be renewed. They have to sign them. We have to sign them. And it lays out as a junior agent, here's what time we expect you at the office. Here's when you need to be available. Here's what we expect on a daily and weekly basis as far as looking at property or previewing properties, open houses, 2 a month minimum, blah, 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 blah. Like, we go through the whole thing. So I'm happy to send you what mine is, my contract, whatever you guys want. But don't copy it for copying's sake. Like, I don't care if you copy it. The problem in Keller Williams is everybody goes, oh, Jennie Wolek's got this awesome, director of operations job description. And then they look up and they use it, and then they're not happy because they didn't really think through, like, is their business the exact same as Jennie's or whatever? And that's happened forever because it's kind of lazy and that's what people do. And I'm guilty of it as well. But I think you have to put down, like, what are the things that, like, you really need in this showing agent? It might be a little bit different based on your, personal situation, professional situation. So I think just come up with what's important to you, not just because some, mega agent's doing it.
Yeah.
Doesn't work very well.
Andrew's asking, would you ever consider doing a graduated compensation scale, like 20-25% for certain price points, and then maybe 15% as you go up in price?
Um, no. I mean, you could. I don't know. I don't think that you need to.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't think you need to, because if you're hiring the right person, they're going to treat your clients at 200,000 the same that they're going to treat your clients at 600,000. It's not about the money. If you do the right things for the, I tell people all the time, I've got this one client in particular, he listed his first property with me, and it was a piece of doo-doo, $78,000 single wide trailer. He's also got about $10 million worth of other real estate that I didn't know about at the time, but he's called me, and that's kind of his retirement. Like, he sells one property a year. And I think he probably tested me on the $78,000 deal.
Well,
And
that's
so,
a lesson
yeah,
right there for sure. We have to treat all people like they have the most wealthy family members and friends that they're going to pass on to us and deliver that amazing experience.
so I think you could, Andrew, but to me, I don't think you have to, because the right person is going to see the vision of the position. And I don't think you have to.
Well, you touched on this at the beginning, Josh. I wrote it down. We got to hang out with Keith Cunningham, and something that I took away from what he said was that you want to pay people a rate that they can live up to and grow in and be. You don't want to try and cheat people out and like not pay them for what they're worth, right? So if somebody says that I have a goal of making this much money in a year, you don't try and whittle it down to get them for the cheapest price, if that makes sense. So
Right.
yeah, so that's what I took away from that. So Andrew, for me on that, it would be, I want them to make as much money as possible, and and whenever they do, you do at the same time. So
Yeah, I
what
guess it's more of just a price point thing, because he's at 500,000 and I'm at like 385. So I don't necessarily want to pay them 15% of 385 because they're not making as much. So that's where
Yeah, but remember,
scarcity side, but more of a price point side.
I implemented this in 2011 when our price point was like literally maybe 220.
Okay. So even if you are at 385 and up, they're still going to be able to make plenty of money at 15%.
I mean, let's just say they do 30 transactions. I mean, I don't know, do the math.
Yeah,
They can still make pretty good money at 385 times 0.03 times 0.15 times 30. They can still make $52,000 doing 30 transactions as a showing agent.
Right. So I'll just kind of throw in a little piece that we kind of use is we used a lot of your ideas with the junior agent role. And so we really use that showing agent part as part of their 30, 60, 90, where they can earn the right and opportunity to help buyers along the way while they're learning and growing and get paid. And ours is just 10%. So at least they get some sprinkles of some income coming in so they feel good, and that keeps it. And their main ultimate goal is to become a full-time agent. So we just kind of do this little in between.
Another thing I'll say is our showing agents don't pay a cap.
Right.
So that's another, instead of them paying a quarter cap, that's 76.50 or whatever it is. They're not paying that. They're not paying any of that stuff. So
yeah,
they're
so
making
that's the whole picture of the value proposition then, right? So you're going to be able to line out for them the benefits of working on your team is this and that. Valerie's asking, how is it not possible to pay the cap? I think it's going to be dependent on your market center and how you do that.
Because based on, it is totally, you're either going to pay for it as a value proposition. I have a deal with my office that I pay 3 caps,
right,
regardless of whether I have 3 agents or 47 agents.
Yeah, so you guys hit up your team leaders with questions about that, not based on what we say here. So Josh, I know you have a minute and you get to hang out with our coach Jordan here in a bit. So any final words that you want to share on whether agents should implement this into their business or not?
Well, I mean, I'm biased. I think that it's like, to me in 2011, it was like the most earth-shattering thing. And I think it's still relevant. I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, if you can, the one thing in our business that bottlenecks really badly is the showings, right? And if you have to be out of the office for an out-of-town client for 3 days, and you have to show them all 3 days, how much are you losing in lead gen time? And how many opportunities are you missing that you can't set appointments on to feed that person even more? So I don't know why you wouldn't do it. If you aren't willing to do it, then it's okay. But if you don't think it works, it's just like, that's a complete mindset issue. It does work.
Well, I
And
think
there's probably thousands of people across the country that are doing it.
yeah, I think that's a great point to end on is think of your lost opportunity when you're out in the field showing houses or attending inspections. Just tally up all those hours of contacts you could be making for other business, right?
Yeah. And then, like Valerie asked, hourly plus a commission. I mean, if they're maybe like your listing, so like my listing manager is licensed. She's actually, I'm doing this, she's actually showing clients for me right now. So I pay her a salary plus 10% on anything that is not under contract that she shows, even if she doesn't put them under contract.
And I think this goes back to your local market. Like, what's that normal compensation or salary for a huge?
I don't really like hourly plus commission. That doesn't make sense to me. But if it's a salary so everybody on our team is a licensed real estate agent, even all the admin, because I don't even want to deal with anything like that. So everybody gets licensed. So if she's salaried and I'm out of town and she can show a buyer or two around, and on my average price points like $800,000 or $900,000 for my buyers, then it's worth her time to do it. And she does that probably 10 to 15 times a year.
So as you guys can see, we only spent 30 minutes on this and there's still so much more to talk about. So we can really continue this conversation over in the group, because I know Josh will share stuff and I can put it in there for you, and we can continue the conversation. Anything final you want to say to everyone, Josh?
No, I'm happy. I put my email in the chat box. If you guys have questions on the contract or path to progression or 30, 60, 90, I'm happy to share it with you guys.
Well, have an amazing day, and all the rest of you that hung out with us. I appreciate you too. See you guys later. Bye.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.